You know something crazy that happened to me yesterday? So I was trying to see when the kids' schedule for next year. I asked ChatGPT, I was like, hey, do you know what the schedule is for the school for next year? And ChatGPT says, no, they haven't released it yet. They typically release it between the spring and summer of this year. They'll release and then ChatGPT says, would you like me to keep track of when they release it and let you know? And I was like, yes.
Interesting. So how will it do that?
I think it'll just keep crawling the website.
How will it alert you?
I do that already. You can, for Bitcoin, I have a certain play on Bitcoin. I know we're recording. This actually might be in the podcast, so I don't want to reveal my hand. But I am monitoring Bitcoin. I've set up a task where every morning around 10 a.m. will send me an alert and update me on where the price of Bitcoin is, what has happened in the last 24 hours that may have affected, and all that stuff. So you can assign tasks to it, and it'll execute those tasks. But what I was surprised by was it suggested, like I was talking to it about something, and it said, the information's not on the internet yet. Do you want me to keep checking and let you know when it's there? I thought that was brilliant. Dramatically reduces the need for us to go check on information at specific websites. If you can just tell, hey, there's a new Airbnb available, Toronto, or wherever you want to go, the price range with these features, let me know. Instead of you having to go to Airbnb.
Yeah.
Now the value of the user experience on the Airbnb website dramatically decreases as well.
That's interesting. So did you set it up?
Yeah, all I had to do was say yes. I said yes, and then it said, okay, when we have the information, I'll let you know. I was like, great.
Cool. That's convenient.
Oh, yeah. What's on the docket?
Well, we're talking about the different industries where AI is having a positive impact.
What do you mean by positive?
No, like actually good for the world.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah, all right. Tackling real world problems is how we've defined it.
Oh, I love that. Do we have examples we're going to go through?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's great. Because a lot of people talk about AI for good, but few people actually get into the nitty gritty and share examples, real world examples.
Yeah. And I think also people just assume that it's not a priority. So sometimes it's nice to be reminded of ways that it is actually being prioritized on top of just driving profit, or just more broadly saying that it's making people's lives easier or better. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's about using AI intentionally, right? To tackle all the problems, like either social, environmental, or humanitarian.
For sure.
Rather than just driving profits. You said it, I said it, we're saying it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right, so let's talk about healthcare first, because that's a cool one and a big one. All right, so first example we have to share is Sweden's Masai trials back in 2023 and since have double-checked mammograms and detected 29% more breast cancers than standard screenings, which has significantly boosted early detection.
That's huge.
It's pretty significant.
That's transformative. There's another powerful example from Tajikistan, where AI-powered X-ray machines screened nearly 120,000 people for tuberculosis. And they identified cases that were otherwise going unnoticed. So we're seeing a trend here in healthcare very early on. And humans are missing a lot of the time some of these diagnoses.
Yeah,
and AI is
making up for human error.
Making up for human error.
In like very drastic cases.
Yeah, no, also look, we're talking about in Sweden, you could debate the quality of the physicians in one country versus the other.
Sure.
What I like about Sweden and Tajikistan is these are two very different countries, very different socioeconomic profiles. And we're seeing that there's gains in both of these countries.
Yeah.
But I'm particularly excited about Tajikistan and other countries like Tajikistan, where healthcare might not be as strong as it is in Sweden.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Very cool. But let's also talk about some of the issues on the flip side that come along with this. And the big one here is bias. If we look at an example, there have been algorithms for kidney transplants that have unfairly disadvantaged Black patients, for example, due to biases in historical data. So there's still a lot to be done there.
Yeah, which just means that transparency in training data and diversity in AI development teams isn't optional. It's essential.
For sure.
We also need rigor, right? Like we need oversight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, sometimes you have to look back to go forward. And so, historically speaking, maybe things weren't done as fairly or equally as we're trying to do moving forward. So sometimes you got to backtrack a little bit and fix some of those errors, hopefully more quickly with the help of AI.
All right. So we're giving these examples, these real world examples of where AI is improving healthcare.
Yeah.
But I think we're glossing over very important.
What's that?
In order for AI to be able to help in healthcare, the AI needs access to your personal health data.
It's very
right?
true. Yes.
Have you ever felt uncomfortable, Jen? I'm just curious. Have you ever felt uncomfortable yourself in sharing your personal health data, knowing that AI and other technologies are going to be processing and doing whatnot with it?
I feel like there's almost like this preconceived notion that when it comes to your personal data, you should feel uncomfortable, but I've never truly known why necessarily or felt like personally victimized, so to speak. But then I did also get my 23andMe results recently, which I know has been a hot issue. So I did delete all that data last week. But yeah, I think there's a natural amount of fear in most people to be hesitant around sharing that sort of information.
I don't know who I trust less, AI or humans. Like I'm already giving a lot of my data, my personal health data, humans. And I'm not talking like the physician or the doctor. There's like all these folks in the healthcare industry that have access to data. I'm more concerned about those humans than I am about AI. That's just me.
Okay. Should we move on to education?
Sure.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about personalized learning and how examples like the Khan Academy's Conmigo Tutor are helping thousands of students by guiding them rather than just giving them answers. I think thousands is a small number.
Yes, thousands is a small number. And AI is also breaking down language barriers. Talking about numbers, Google's recent addition of 15 African languages to their voice recognition services empowers nearly 300 million people.
There's a bigger number.
And enabling more students to learn in their native languages.
That's super cool. But again, there are some valid concerns.
Downer to it, huh, Jen?
I know this isn't usually my style. I wonder, could heavy reliance on AI tutors stunt critical thinking or deepen educational inequalities?
That's interesting you would say that. I read a report this morning about an MIT professor who was saying that the level of math that the students are displaying in their freshman year is one of the lowest levels that he's seen since he started teaching at MIT. And he believes that it's because these students were using AI in the last years of high school and offloading a lot of these critical mathematical reasoning that you need to use in practice in order to really consolidate within your own brain. And now they're showing up to college, the skills, they're just not there anymore. That's a really valid concern. I think it's not even a concern. It's like a real issue that's already happened.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it's interesting because with tools like AI, do they really need that skill?
We mentioned the example of Google being able to translate 15 languages that prior this content was not available to those student languages. That's one way to use AI to improve the access for folks to information so that they can learn. Another thing is your point, whether they're using AI to solve the problems and the questions that they're supposed to be learning how to solve for themselves. So I think it's all about balancing access and to AI, and also like where and how the AI is being used to improve education as opposed to just as like a crutch for the student.
Sure. For a quick answer. Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because there are certain versions, whether it's ChatGPT or some of these educational apps, I'm sure, where it is providing the answer, but it's also providing the knowledge or teaching the thought behind how they got there versus just spitting out an answer. So they could still be learning and getting the answer versus just getting the answer and skipping that whole piece of actually learning how to do it themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed in my children engaging more enthusiastically with tailored AI apps than traditional classroom methods. And I've also noticed that a lot of the great teachers out there are very much aware of and engaging with AI on their own side of the coin. And so what they're doing is they're making sure these kids show their work whenever they're doing homework or when they're at the exam. But yes, you could, and they do use ChatGPT to check on the answers or to whatnot, but they still need to work out and show the work of them doing the calculations and so on. So we'll see. But I don't think the answer is, oh, you should let your children leverage AI to help them succeed. I think it's all about balancing between the access to the technology and accelerating their own growth and learning as opposed to
supporting their learning versus taking it away
with the technology.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure people felt similarly when calculators were invented, right? That would change things and people would no longer use their brain the same way. So it's just a much more dramatic, but iteration of that. Cool. So definitely promising. I think education's a big area where it can have far more benefits than perhaps downfalls, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that making the pie bigger is always good. So if you're leveraging AI to improve access to education, that's a no-brainer. That's AI for good. But if only certain folks or kids or students who have access to certain AI tools are doing better in school and better in general because they have access and the others don't have access, then
for sure.
Is that AI for good or is that just AI for?
For sure, yeah. Was concerned of that as soon as I learned about all these tools you can pay for using AI. How equal and fair is that to those who just simply don't have access or can't afford it?
So AI's environmental role is fascinating, right? California has an Alert California AI system, for example, that identified 77 wildfires before any human spotted them, preventing potential disasters. Everybody's seen the damage and destruction that these wildfires have been causing lately. Think about it. 77 of those were spotted early and stopped because of AI. That's huge.
Yeah, and that's only the beginning. I think that's super cool. I feel like even in our lifetimes, how many times have you said, how have we not been able to find a solution to this problem? Or how is it possible that no one's figured out the cure for this or how to stop a forest fire? And it feels like now more than ever, there's so much potential to accomplish those things. So this sort of innovation is really exciting to me because it's just something that would make such a difference in the world if we were able to solve for it. So super cool, amazing technology for sure. Google's Flood Hub has also expanded flood forecasting to over 80 countries, another huge life-saving technology. So lots happening in this area. And the impact is so massive. Like the number of people impacted by that is huge. So very exciting.
Good for Google. We've been quoting Google quite a bit. Like their do no evil mission aligns with using AI for good.
Yes, definitely.
But ironically,
you have a lot this time.
Training large AI models consumes significant energy. Training session can generate emissions equal to 5 cars' lifetime emissions.
That makes me so sad. It's really crazy. Yeah, I know. Okay, so Google again, for example, they're tackling this by reducing energy usage in data centers by 40%. But really, I think we'll soon, if we haven't already, approached a point of really assessing whether the environmental benefits outweigh the costs, because that's like absolutely insane, that impact.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I believe they can, provided we can keep innovating in sustainable compute practices. But on the flip side, that 5 cars lifetime number of emissions is
alarming.
Quite a doozy. However, that's to train one large language model. And now, as we've seen all the applications of a large language model, you take one large language model, you can apply it to a lot of different things, solve a lot of different problems, help people get more yield from their crops so that more people who are hungry can eat, have access to 300 million more people to education in those 15 languages in Africa that didn't have access to education. Is that worth the trade-off there? I think as we get better and more efficient in the training and the compute, that balance is going to be a positive one, net positive. I also think about how society is going to change. Yes, we're driving around a lot right now because we got to go to different places to do different things. But the more we can incorporate AI into our lives, maybe we can change the way we live so that we can be more local, more locally focused, more walkable, more bicycle.
Or maybe we figure out the sustainable energy solution using one of these models.
Cold fusion. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a very optimistic outlook. In the meantime, I think we can definitely be more conscious of when we choose to use these models, and perhaps using it for everything is not entirely necessary. I don't know. I hope there is some sort of conscious or awareness that people come to have around whether it's necessary or nice to have in certain situations, perhaps just to offset that a little bit anyway.
Humanitarian uses of AI are equally, if not more, impressive. After the devastating 2023 earthquake in Turkey and Syria, AI-powered mapping platforms quickly assess damage to direct urgent aid.
And Zipline's drone systems in Rwanda, for example, have dramatically reduced maternal mortality by delivering medical supplies more promptly. So it's literally saving lives.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
But transparency and ethics remains vital, just like every other AI for good application.
Yeah.
Who oversees AI decisions, right? Like in the case of distributing aid, who decides how the AI determines who gets what first? And how do we ensure these technologies empower rather than disempower those local communities?
Yeah, community participation and transparent governance will definitely be essential. Have you seen any effects of this?
Absolutely. Particularly in disaster response, technology empowered locals by providing them with timely information to act independently.
Yeah, it's coming. Maybe it'll be able to fix the flooding in Brickell.
Or Aventura, for that matter.
I think, yeah, community participation is important. Having these conversations involve more people to avoid that bias will be really important. Speaking of which, if we look at the more local level of impact and accessibility, in Kenya, an AI smartphone app helps farmers diagnose crop diseases from photos, directly boosting food security.
Cool.
Cool.
Initiatives like OpenAI's partnership with Be My Eyes give visually impaired people instant AI-driven visual assistance, transforming daily lives. If you haven't seen one of these demos, let's put a link out there. Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
That's really cool. I want to check it out.
I'll describe it a little bit. You can watch the video, but there's a person who's blind, and I think they're wearing headphones, or they're wearing like the glasses, or I don't know which device, I can't remember, but the AI is looking at the world and it's describing it to the person so they can hear about everything that's going on. It's amazing.
We did have a lot of butts in there. So responsible development and deployment are obviously critical along the way. And I do hope just as much so that those things are prioritized and taken into account as we look forward. But overall, yeah, I definitely share your optimism. And I really think these conversations matter. And I think the more people understand the good and the potential good that can come from AI, the more optimistic they'll become as well, and hopefully be part of the solution too.
Yeah. And if you're watching, make sure to check out the links on the description of the show where you can check out all of these examples for yourselves.
Yeah, totally.
Really exciting stuff.
Definitely. Cool.
Jen, AI's potential for good is clearly vast, but responsible development and deployment are critical. What's the takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is think bigger picture and recognize that the potential for AI to do good is much bigger than yourself or the organization even that you work for, or potentially some of those smaller concerns that might impact you personally. The broader positive impacts on society are endless if we allow them to be. And I think by prioritizing more of that, AI really can do more good than harm.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's why conversations like these matter, because the way we shape AI today defines the future.
For sure.